allow the superintendent to sign a memorandum of agreement with the Teachers Association regarding extending to the current contract related to a retirement incentive regarding health insurance coverage for employees with 30 years. Mandy?
I'll second that.
Rick? Oh, Lynn. Lynn, okay, sorry. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Amy? Everyone?
For the benefit of our public, as well as for our board, we were asked to put together a very brief overview of the context in which all these decisions that we're making are being made. I do understand that we're all clear that an accounting mistake was made, but there's a bigger story here, and I tell it today so that you understand that we are not alone as a school district. My family lives, my children attend in the Canton School District, a district that in the next year or two will be both fiscally and educationally insolvent.
Yeah, I don't.
My children will face classroom sizes that are very, very large. So this story that I'm telling you is one that I've begun to live with myself, but I think that it's worth telling this community because we are most likely on that same path, but we are not alone. This is a story that starts, and please pardon my elementary style of presentation, but I did borrow the flip chart from the elementary school. This starts with Wall Street, and it starts with the real estate market collapse. Our state depends so strongly on the real estate market and the way in which it influenced the financial markets that most of the revenue of our state that has driven this economy for decades is gone. And while it comes back slowly, it has now come to our backyard, truly, where it may have been a friend or a family member who in the past lost their house. It's now come to be the fact that our school districts and our state cannot raise enough revenue to support its citizens in the ways that school districts were designed to support. The second is that the rising costs of healthcare affect all businesses. They affect all of our lives for sure, but they also affect school districts very profoundly. And anyone who pays into with a premium knows that their premium has risen. Anyone who owns a business who pays the remainder of the premium knows that those premiums have risen significantly. And the last is that as the state doesn't have the monies, the funds to match an employer who distributes or contributes to an employee's retirement fund, the burden falls back on a school district. So these three have created an enormous perfect storm. So while I know that there was an accounting error, there's a certain inevitability to this, and what we begin to do today is the most important work you may ever do as a school community, and that is to try to work together as diligently and as slowly as we can to survive.
Large raises contribute to.
I have two more stories to tell, and one is the story of this district coming up. This is our district in the coming year. We have revenues coming in of about $11.9 million through all sorts of means, whether it's our tax base or our aid base. We have costs going out of about $12.5 million. We have a gap of about $880,000. We know we only have so much left and available to cover that. So that's the business of tonight, is making decisions on what we cover and with what. But as we look out into the years to come, we see that every year what comes in is about $500,000 more in revenue, but what goes out is about $500,000 more in expenses. What we don't have after this year or after a couple more years is any reserve monies to help offset those costs. So while right here if we were to change nothing, we have enough to survive for one more year without seeing any substantial change. But next year, we likely don't have $718,000, and with that come some terrible decisions. The year after, we still don't have $1.5 million more dollars. The year after, we don't have two. The year after, we don't have $2.8 million to cover the gaps that we currently cannot raise.
Those are
And
some
that's an
smart decisions,
impossible
and isn't it?
pathway. So I want to show you the story of Canton so you can see in advance and you can pay close attention to what they do. Because even though I live there and my children will be deeply impacted, we can still learn and see what decisions they make that help to drive the decisions that we want to make. Their story starts a little bit earlier. It starts in 2010, 2011, where they had a gap of 1.2 million. They had fund balance enough to cover that gap, and they still had to reduce staff. In 11, 12, they continued to have that gap for the same reasons that we have it today. They had more in their reserves, they spent it out, they still had 18.1 staff that they had to get rid of. 12, 13 this year, continue to have the gap, 23.4 more staff leave. Next school year is their last school year in which they have any fund balance left. And this is the story, and this is a story we will try our hardest not to get to, but we have to use them as our guide. I don't know the exact number of staff. I do know that all sports are gone. The musical is gone. The ag program is gone. All art electives gone. All extracurriculars gone. Family and consumer sciences gone. Elementary guidance gone. Transportation, anywhere within 1 mile of the school, gone. Full day kindergarten, possibly gone. Elementary music, gone. All music elementary, or music electives, sorry, gone. The pool has already closed. ITS services, gone. This is a school that's just up the street from you.
We got people that live
Live in
here in here
Canton.
and live in Canton. Those aren't accurate
They're not
numbers.
accurate numbers.
These are numbers from the Canton School District website.
The pool is closed
The pool is closed.
right now.
Are you saying that there's going to be cuts in Canton this year?
I'm telling you, at the end of
No,
the school year,
no.
there'll be more staffing cuts, yes.
For next year? Not bad.
She works in Canton.
She works there.
And we don't have
I don't know how they're gonna fund a $2 million gap then.
But none of this was caused by a error.
None of this is caused by an error.
Correct. The error is a different story altogether.
Right.
Yeah, I can't.
You're
speak to
trying to
that.
combine them into two things, they're two separate things.
I'm not speaking to the error at all. I'm
Well-
speaking to the reality, and that wouldn't be my place to speak to anyway on elementary school.
Well, we're all here for EK. We want to know what's happening in EK. That's what affects
I'm
us.
giving you context. If you would like to use it, go ahead. If you're not interested in any of that information, that's fine. I'm trying to help you see that there is a very big picture out there, and that's your choice to do with as you will, but it sets up some of the decisions that the board makes, so thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I think the big raises had a lot to do with it too.
I do want to comment about the mistake. It was a mistake. It was not misappropriation of funds or missing money. It was a mistake, and the fact of the matter is whether we found it this year or last year, we would still be making cuts. If we had found it last year, we may have had to make decisions differently than we are now.
You may not have passed a $9.1 million project if that was out beforehand and it's off the fish, it comes out a week later.
Has nothing to do with
It
it.
has nothing to do with it. With
Point of order, we're not
Point-
talking
yeah,
about the project.
we can't add those items into our budget. That's just not gonna be helpful. If we didn't have the project, we have to add those items into our budget. So, do we want to just go through the list again? We started looking on that.
Yeah, can I just?
Yeah, oh yes, Becky, do your.
So I did the 5-year projected budget. It has all the detail, probably more than what you want, but I included it. This is how we came to it. I did the increases based on what we are seeing this year or what we expect to see next year if I knew that. Teachers' retirement, I estimated to go up about 2%. That's less than this year, but. And then for the ERS, I did 1.5%, which is slightly less than this year. With new tiers for retirement, the savings are gonna start working themselves in. Health insurance, we saw an 8.5% increase this year. I'm estimating 9% over the next 5 years. It's probably high, but I wanted to put it just in case. BOCES, 4%. Now with the BOCES, we do get aid back on that. Our aid is about 80%. So any cost you see is just what it costs, but it does drive revenue in the following year. Workers' comp, I estimated about 5%. Not really sure, that depends on usage. So I just picked a 5% number. Teacher salary, I did increase based on what the current contract was over the next 2 years. I also extended that as if you were gonna increase it, just for continuity's sake. So as if you were gonna repeat that for 3 years. Same with the support salaries contract. The admin salaries, I did not increase budget for that. Next year you might see a slight increase, but that was because of based on the raises you voted on this year. It's common practice to do it that way.
Maybe
So
admin
not
doesn't need
budget
raises
for
this
it
year.
Because nothing's discussed until next year.
So the front page is basically an overview
Yes.
with the finer details on the remaining pages.
And I used our base for this year is what I'm estimating expenditures to be, which is 11.9 million. As you can see, we increase about $500,000 each year. So 2.6 increase over 5 years. Revenue, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I didn't want to include any tax increases, because that is up to you. And the state aid, we're not sure what's gonna happen with state aid. So I just left that as a base to show you where it would be if state aid did not increase. The restricted reserves, I sent you a list of those, and there's also a copy of that. There's certain reserves you can only use for their specified purpose. And then we have the unrestricted reserve. So I used, like for unemployment, for example, we had budgeted 30,000 for next year. If we only spend 15, then we can only use 15 from that reserve. So it would decrease the amount of reserve we used. The unrestricted reserve we can use for anything we want. So I did project what we would use for the reserve for the next few years. As you can see, this is also taking into account that we use the reserves. Just because you budget, hopefully you don't use them all, but you don't want to bank on that. Any questions?
But you did not tell us coming up. These two background things next week, right? That increases based on these two backgrounds.
Yes, we started off with the prior year budget, which I used the expenses estimated for this year. And then I added the increase of the 497, that equals the 12,488, that is the starting point for next year.
So the increases are solely due to the cost on the bottom. The
Per
increases
year.
in the budget, right, are
Right.
based on what you're seeing, the items that are listed below.
Well, we already know in the first column, 2013, 2014, our budget gap is not now 883,841.
Nope, that's without your, any tax increase. I did not include the tax increase.
Based on what we talked about before we come back
Right.
to the session. So what is that number now? It's not 883,841.
617, 474?
Our deficit for next year right now is 617,444.
Or 74.
The admin raises will take you down to 600,000. Under.
Is there any other questions
Yep.
for Becky? I'm
Actually,
sure
it'd take
that
them
we'll
under
get
5.
it all along. Okay, I guess we should look at our flexible savings list. Nice title. We just want to start at the top and go down through.
So are we gonna make a decision on
I think we have to.
Yeah.
We have to adopt the budget Monday, and Becky has to have time to prepare the budget. I think we're gonna, if we could, just go around and just do a yes or no. We've already talked about most of these things last time, and if nobody wants to change anything, that's okay. We'll just speak up and say that, and then the items at the bottom. So, we'll start with marching band again. We'll just go right around if anybody wants to start off.
I'll start with that. Back last meeting,
Okay?
Agreed?
Okay, marching band stays. Driver ed. What we agreed to last time was to keep it and that the students would pay $100 cost, so that that cost would help pay for a little bit of the project.
That is already in the budget.
That's already in the budget, okay.
It's in the budget.
That's already, so the
I
figure,
increased the revenue by 12 points.
the figure that's left there is what it still will cost us.
Well, I think we have, the $100 we kind of agreed on, and we use the van for the idea of having the van for, or the idea is for the driver's ed, so I don't see any sense in getting rid of it now.
I agree.
Okay, sounds like it stays. Just in sixth grade summer school.
I thought we said with the extra instruction they were getting during the year, that most of that was being taken care of, that I, is that,
Yeah, I think she referenced homework.
oh, that was homework?
Well, that she talked
The
about,
Homework Club was covering that.
Was
right,
covering
this
the
needs,
concepts.
okay, currently need that by homework club.
Okay,
there's only 3 students.
right.
Well, there was approximation on number of 6 students. I mean, I think she may have said last year, though, it wasn't that many.
Right, last year was 3, I think she said.
So if that's being covered through the homework club, do we really need to keep it?
That's not anything good. Good summer.
The after school, well, they're, right, homework club, FFA and after school art. What are you saying down there, Tom?
I was just wondering if we don't do this in the summer, then we are doing it during the school year. Covered it.
That's assuming the homework club portion of that, the 765 stays.
Well, I think I'm willing to let the 5th and 6th grade go on the recommendation
So we keep the homework.
that we keep the homework club and that increased instruction was going on during the school year.
Sounds good.
Okay, so cut 5th and 6th grade summer school? And keep homework club?
The after-school.
The after-school homework club.
FFA.
Are we keeping all of it? FFA, after-school art?
I think we decided those other 2 ones. silly, the larger the cost anyway.
So do I hear you say that we're keeping that? Just to be sure?
Keep it.
Okay. AP exams.
What did he keep you?
We talked about free and reduce, and, free and reduce pay $15, and all others would pay $42.50 to cover, part of the cost, is what the recommendation is.
I disagree with that, I think we should keep it the same as that.
Lynn, we'll just go right around the table.
I think I'll go with the 4250.
Joe?
So this, so I understand what we're talking about here. So is this cost savings that we're seeing include the additional money?
The cost, the 2550 is what we currently spend. If we change it, the consideration column, that would obviously influence the cost.
So how much of it, if we implemented that, final?
Unfortunately, we depend on the
numbers.
students that qualify.
What are other school districts do? Do you have any idea?
I don't know.
It's in our budget right now. It's in our budget right now.
That's what our budget.
I don't see, all the numbers going on the numbers, probably not
I would still be in favor of having the free reduce, the recommended free reduce pay 15 and others pay 42.50, just to kind of defer the cost of that. That's just my opinion. Anybody else down here?
I'd be in favor of cutting it completely. Save the 2,500.
Tom? What's that?
I'd rather go with paying 15 and 42, so at least they have the option to have it. If kids want it, need it, they're still helping some.
So Lynn, you were in favor of paying 42.50. Joe, you want to keep it the same? Reggie?
Yeah.
Keep it the same. Mandy? Mandy? $42.50. Chris?
I'd keep it the same.
Okay.
4250.
All right. And $42.50 it is.
Does that, Becky, does that change the cost? Or does it stay at 2,550?
Well, that's what, that's kind of an unknown. I mean, we don't know, it would be less definitely, but we don't know who would be qualifying for the 15.
And it depends on the number of students who would remain in the AP exams, so the number will fluctuate every year. The expectation is the child that doesn't qualify for free reduced lunch would be expected to pay half of the cost of the exam.
So I don't know if we could effectively budget how much we save, but it would reduce what we're spending.
In Straight Truth and CLOSA, last time we agreed to keep both of those, and do we get $5,000 for each one, or is that $5,000 divided up, Becky? You know? I think it must be divided.
That was for divided, yes.
Terry, excuse me, could we ask that you folks speak up a little?
Oh,
We
sure.
are hearing nothing.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
Are you talking about the 8th grade trips right now?
Yes.
Because I was under the impression the last couple of years they did not get $5,000. So I don't know how you're gonna cut something they don't have.
I think what she's saying is, it's $5,000 for both of those, so it's $2,500 for each.
But they're fundraising now for
They
it, the
didn't get
sixth grade
anything.
is. They're fundraising for it.
Oh, right, right.
It costs like 18,000
We,
to go on the trip.
last time we decided to keep it, so, want to keep it?
I agree with that one. Makes it a lot easier on the seniors.
And,
I don't know what to tell, I know they do fundraising, we kick in some and they do fundraising, I don't know.
I would guess what kind of number of students and where they go. The eighth grade
Oh, yeah.
maybe in the 10 to 15. Senior trip, I would think young grant students.
oh.
In that range.
Do we have anybody that will be doing the close-up trip?
Why are we even doing an 8th grade?
Has anybody stepped up for that?
I haven't heard of me.
So it may be reduced anyway.
Well, is that something we take out, or?
If nobody, does that, then it'll just go back.
Yeah, they do, but they don't use them.
So,
Exactly.
who's in favor of keeping the 8th grade trip then? There's something else?
Did you say, Randy?
I can't hear them.
It's not too good. The thing is, if you don't use it, it goes back into the general fund, and if the fundraising. Well, you can talk about it in magazines, corrections.
Problem is you're pulling it out of the funds to begin with.
Okay. I'm hearing everybody, most everybody say they want to keep the 8th grade trip in close up. Whiz quiz, same situation. Will we have anybody to do that? We don't know.
You know, that would be something next year.
Do you want to keep it in there for an option, or do we just want to?
It's only 500, so.
And we'll see how it goes.
It's all total 500.
That's
The
18.
person that does this will get a salary, just part of the contract,
Yes, right, that's,
which is 500, just expenses.
I know that's the,
that's like,
I think that's
Is
the
there anybody
same.
in the background to do it?
I don't know.
SAT prep for math and English was last year, I believe, was that last year or this year, 6 students. And
That's again, we discussed last time, how sometimes you have a whole class session, you might get 2 students, or you might start with 5 that show up the first hour or so, and then it drops to 2. You might have it fluctuates again. So I would say that's a fair average.
so regardless of how many kids, that's what it costs us to pay the people that provide that.
One suggestion would be that maybe the students will be required to make a deposit in the beginning based on attendance that would return their funds at the end to keep them encouraged to come, you know, maybe in for a monetary purpose, but so that their attendance would be increased. If we're willing to pay that amount of money
Right.
for that number of students.
You feel that this is beneficial to students?
I would say the ones that come, absolutely. You know,
You've
there's,
got how many? 2 to 5?
Students that attend regularly, absolutely. You know, the problem is we want to keep their regular attendance and certainly, you know, increase what we're seeing from those, 6 students, more than that. Because that's certainly a pretty high cost for just 6 students. But if a deposit were required, I think that would, maybe they would take it a little more seriously.
Well, if you ask for a deposit, you would have a better idea of how many is going to show up. And if they did show up, we would dedicate to following through on it. Can we do a thing where we ask for a deposit, and if they show up for the classes, then they can get their money back?
Yeah, that's what we did with Red Red last year, same thing. We asked for a deposit, the student completed the course, they were given their money back. But if they dropped it,
They didn't get their,
They
Then
didn't
they'll
get
get the money back.
Do you think that would deter the
Yeah.
students from doing that if they had to come up with $100 attendance?
I don't know if I would do 100, that doesn't seem to be steep, but I think it would be more regularly attended. I I think what happens is you might get 2, or you might get 4, but really, there probably should be 10 to 15 students there. You know, it might be
But there's not.
that same 10 to 15 students, but they're not all there at the same time. So that's a suggestion, again, it's an idea to consider if you're thinking you want to keep this. You know, that's one way to maybe make an attempt to try to improve the attendance at that and make, you know, see if it works. I think we discussed again last time that Canton also offers a program, our students certainly are, they pay, I don't know the cost. If you take the program at Canton, you know, the parent pays to attend, your child pays to attend their program.
If you want to take it out, if you're willing to put it in place. See if it is
Yeah, I mean, it could be, one of the things, like, we could write a check, the parent writes a check, you know, we just don't cash the check, and they just get the check back at the end. And it could be based on a certain amount of attendance, you know, you must, attend 80% of the time, you must attend, it could be whatever we decide, you know, was appropriate.
I think we can keep it and work out the particulars
Sure.
as it goes along.
I agree.
We just keep everything on this page, skip to the next
Have them
one.
deposit and how many days they have to take to get it back.
I think it's something we need to cut. We've got to cut somewhere because
Yeah, really.
within a half hour, we've saved about $3,000. Take that off to $617,000.
SAP president.
I'd like to deposit like that.
Joe? Reggie? I see almost everybody say they want to keep it with the deposit. Okay. Summer ag. We talked about it.
We did cut it in half
We
last
cut it
time.
in half last time, so this is just, the $1,700 is what it costs for them to go to the fair.
$1,700 is the half price we talked about last time.
Since we've already cut it in half, from the last meeting, I say keep it.
Yep.
All right. Golf team.
They've gotten rid of one thing.
Coach costs $1,342. Transportation costs $3,042. For a total cost of $4,384.
Can't use the van for that. I think I asked you that before.
You know, I think it was gonna be once in a while when it was available.
I think at this point, they were talking there were too many students to fit in the van.
Right, on days of a match, when fewer students would go, that would be possible if the van were available. But if the whole team went, it would be, it's too many students to take a van.
Which bus would you use in that case?
I don't know what bus they use. I don't know if it's a smaller version, I don't know.
How many students are going to go for like, I mean,
Think she's, I want to say, I remember she said it's 8 students that. 8?
Oh, I think
On the
there's,
team?
I think
or
there's
is that
more
actually
than
the
that.
match? She said there was
I think
more
it's
than
up to
that.
12.
Well,
Okay.
Team there is, but you don't go to the match.
well, if you're going to use a 30-passenger bus, that's one, instead of running a 60-passenger bus.
A couple of them. No.
I know though, we have to take a bus, if it's whole name. If it's a match and then when you can take the van.
I assume they go 5 days a week, practice.
I think there were 17 trips for practice. And then maybe
Matches, I don't
8
remember.
to 10.
Matches. 25 trips. That going on.
They go to Kansas, yeah. Which the course gives us practice time for free.
probably our students that aren't, otherwise will.
I'd like to keep it this year, and then obviously I think next year we will have all sports on the agenda, and we'll have it go down through all of them.
Mhm.
Distance learning is next at a cost of $6,500.
You know what they're gonna have to do?
As far as,
They're gonna have to get rid of the teachers.
that's gonna be grant.
But they're waiting for those people to have a meeting, and I don't remember what the end result, I don't know if we know the end result of that yet.
So we still need to do the $6,000?
I don't know that that decision has been made either.
Pardon me?
I don't know if that decision has been made either. If there was a determination that that was definitely, I know that, I think Sue addressed it. If we have this, we will definitely need to have the fiber optic cable replaced.
Right.
But the availability of other funds to offset that, I'm not sure.
I thought you said that, possible to be grant money out there. that-
Right, that's what I mean. I don't, that I haven't heard anything about, so.
As the tighter the budgets get, is that a tool that we use for other school districts to teach, one teacher and somebody else?
Depending on the classes, what's offered in other districts, and if that aligns to what our students, our student schedules, certainly there's opportunities that will exist for students to pick up other classes that wouldn't be offered here.
Do you want to tell us what else is offered on the distance learning, so we're all aware?
Oh, gosh, I don't know if I have the exact.
Well, just off the top of your head.
I know, for instance, there's psychology, sociology, English literature, I think at one point was offered. Sometimes there's business classes that are offered on there. You might have a full accounting class on there. We got calculus offered there. I think we had Spanish 4 offered at some point on the DL. There's a variety of things, the list changes, but I know there are some mainstays, especially the classes that kind of come through so you can, and our students can get those college credits.
Anybody did one for Paul Smith?
Our college algebra class is the class that we get credit from Paul Smith's, so that's not on the DL. There may be another Paul Smith's class in the DL that I'm not aware of.
How many students use the DL?
Again, it can change. Probably, I think last time we had asked this, I want to say it's around 8 to 10. Like, for instance, I know Mr. Remington was in there today using that classroom. There's 4 students in there. I know that there's a student that will be graduating this year, and she's taking 2 classes on the DL. The same student taking 2 classes. So, it changes again every year, but I would say it probably averages between 5 to 10 students.
students, I think we need to worry about.
Program.
Probably, yeah.
What do you mean by that question?
Well, we have to make cuts to
Right.
subject we're down the road for elective type courses, something that can be leveraged, so those students don't necessarily it's offered to the learning.
Right.
The stars align.
The pain of some of those decisions, maybe a little less painful. If they can start getting it other ways.
Right, depends on the sequence and what they want, but yes.
We want to just leave that alone, since we don't have the other information
Sure.
about the grant and maybe Sue will have more information by Monday, or maybe not, I don't know. Community swim,
We couldn't get that lucky. She'll be back.
anybody down there want to chime in? School play, cost of $2,147.
I don't believe this was on the list last
Play.
meeting.
Right, no,
That's what it was.
What does that 2147 consist of?
Here's the cost of the director and the choreographer.
Sorry?
It's the cost of the director and the choreographer.
What do you say? $2,000.
Whoever does it.
So there's a charge for the place that may offset that cost.
Is that, or is it a fundraiser?
Purchasing
to
other
offset
plays,
the rights to, I could be wrong, but I think, okay.
I think the
Right,
price.
it's, that's an expense to the district, that's what we pay for the adults that supervise the students. And fundraising, the charge that's, the admission fees to cover what their outgoing costs are, such as the rights to operate that fund.
It costs a lot of companies.
What was that figure for the school play?
$2,147.
Pardon?
$2,147.
Okay, and what does that cover?
That covers the director and the choreographer.
Who pays for the rights? Would you know that to put on the play?
We think maybe some of this money goes to that.
Comes out of the
Oh,
budget.
about the musical, you said the play.
It's that school play, I'm not sure if they meant, if they meant the musical, because I know there too.
We've
there's
got
a
the
musical and
first
senior
one, there's a
play.
senior play, and then there's music, but if you're talking about choreography.
That's her.
This is the musical.
Well, I did this
Yeah.
year's senior play, and then somebody else did. Miss Ricketts.
No,
here.
I did.
Miss Ricketts did the
Yeah,
senior
but-
play, and I helped her.
So did some of the money, Abby, go back to offset part of the cost of the rights to play?
I can answer that question.
Oh,
Sure.
sure. For the musical, yeah, sure.
The drama club has funds, and those are the funds that are used to buy the rights to the musical. And also supplies like for the set and, expenses to put on the musical. Then the salaries are contractual, so. There's this year for the first time, there's a musical director, and the assistant director, or a musical director,
She decides contractual.
an overall director and a choreographer. And those are prorated salaries, the overall director.
But that's different for the play, right?
Yes.
Ms. Ricketts?
Yes, when I did the senior play, I submitted what the play was going to be, and I assumed that the cost for that came out of the budget from what was made
The cost?
the previous
Of
year,
the
right? Or it comes out of the senior
play.
class.
So you didn't
Play
get paid
both.
anything for doing the play?
No, I got paid for the musical and the senior play.
The scripts.
Yeah.
Were covered by, which they were inexpensive, I believe.
Right.
Covered by the school, and then that is a fundraiser. I think that's what, that total might be the senior play is what you're looking at, I'm not sure.
So in other words, this is all the plays that we have at school.
No, this is not senior plays.
I don't know what.
This is the musical?
No.
Right? No, that's the senior.
No, it's the senior play.
Okay, so.
That's
what-
obviously, you could be off, this is an approximation.
Okay. So I've already heard a lot of you say we want to keep it because of the community event. Anybody down there want to speak up?
When they get teachers. Teachers. Why don't they just go to the next page, get it over with?
School contribution to the summer recreation program is $4,000.
That's the additional money from 2 weeks added on.
No, this is, last time we cut, I don't remember what that, 2,000 maybe?
Yeah.
We cut that. This is, the 4,000 that's left is for the 4-week, just the basic program.
Contract situation we've already entered into.
I don't think there's really a contract, and I don't know what's going on with it, the last I heard.
I know paper gets submitted for this upcoming summer. And it's been, they are aware that
But the community doesn't do their baseball. Swimming.
I don't know the number of students that they had last year, and I think if it's for the last 3 years, I've gotten to fluctuate up and down, so I can't speak to the number that attended last year.
So this is for the 4 weeks. Do we want to keep it?
Without the planes.
I'm sorry. Last time you cut it.
It would be less funding. The towns contribute as well as the school. But it would certainly be a hit to their budget. That's what we cut last year.
Is that the school transportation?
extended day, so the extended day workouts. Right.
Still
Well, but it could be just that happens to tend to be after workout, they may pay a portion of that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, your total cost is altogether.
That they get the operating budget for summer rec, you know, because it's not, I mean, the school really makes, right. We house, we allow them to use the space and we make a contribution, but I don't know what their budget is. I can tell you, I think the town contributes more.
Though contingency is gonna get cut anyway.
Right, so we're probably looking at about
Just saying.
$12,000, if that's truly what's being provided by, you know, the other community. It's completely run by the community. That's your contribution towards the contributing.
So our tax coverage is somewhere there.
Yeah.
So we want to start down on Tom then? Keep or cut Tom?
We almost got to cut it.
I just very eggs.
No.
Sure. That's.
Yeah, he wants to compromise, he wants to cut it down.
Yeah. Five without our full level of funding.
Is this year? I think it is, I think it's, why don't, Becky, would that be in this
She's
year's
been on
budget would already be taken care of?
She
This
still
is for
doesn't know
next
when
summer?
it runs in
Summer
there.
coming up.
It is
Because
for
we
the
start in
summer
July.
coming up. Okay.
It's very difficult to take money away at this point.
Since we've already cut it, $2,000, I say keep it.
Well, they'll have to be aware of that change.
Yeah, now
You end up in contingency, they're not gonna get it anyways, just like last time.
They did, yeah. It was much more successful last year also.
In fact, it was just growing pains, I think.
Yes.
You're learning there's new staff, so they had
The $4,000
Yeah, the 4,000.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay, most everybody wants to keep it? The newsletter. The issue is that our postage doubled this year because, well, I don't know how to explain it. Somebody that we knew was helping us out with that, and they no longer are. And so our postage doubled, and what we're trying to do is have the newsletter posted online, and people that want to request mailings will still get that. I have no idea what, there's not a figure here for what that would save us, but we did it before, and
As long as we offer it to people that can't get it online, then I agree with that.
right, it says people can request to have it mailed to them. Okay. The next thing is a 20% reduction across all sports programs. For total cost of $17,850. I have no idea what that looks like.
Well, we talked about the stop that
What they decided about the newsletter?
not replaceable form.
They go online.
Yeah.
And we've already cut
Those
about
things already
7,000.
Request.
We cut about 7,000 last time. From, the uniform, the sports supplies. This was the. Coaching and.
It's just a number. The idea that if we're looking incrementally over many, many years at reducing sports programs, it just represents a number that we have to look at for year one, probably a number that would have to be looked at for year two.
So we don't know.
It's not targeted, it's really targeted, it's just a figure to consider, just to see it in print and see if it's even a rational number to use.
I think it's something that we should use here, discussion, but without the detail behind it. You know, I believe it's a kind of across the board, it makes sense to do, but.
Nothing's across the board.
Program all together, is it? Yeah, well, I'm not sure, you know, it makes sense to do it, we can talk about the next budget, I think, but I'm not comfortable making a determination about how to do that.
And if we can get some information on that, maybe, some
Yeah.
emails on what you anticipate those
That was sort of the,
reductions.
that was the alternative to targeting a particular school.
And I agree with the approach,
Yeah.
but I just haven't told them the decision.
Sure.
A little more information.
Excuse me, I couldn't hear you, but what are these program codes in athletics? What is it? I mean, is that something we can go to the AD and talk about? Does she know?
She will be giving us more information. We're not gonna make a decision on it.
No, I just didn't hear what.
20% reduction across all sports programs for a cost of a savings of $17,850. So we're requesting more information because we don't really know what that would look like.
Programs, you mean like after-school programs?
Sports programs.
Sports programs?
Right.
It's a 20% of the athletic budget, that value is 20% of the athletic budget. So how that could play out could be in a number of ways.
I think it's certainly something to look at. If we get a little more information, it could be doable.
Well, that's, I mean, that's gonna mean a sports team is probably going to need to be cut. And possibly more than one.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking up everybody.
That's why I said there's nothing across the board.
We saved a lot of money with them. Is that something we can look at maybe and then revisit on Monday
Was that
night?
discussed with the last?
Yeah, is that
It was brought up.
It was brought,
No, that wasn't the 7,000. The 7,000 was uniform.
35 was uniforms and then there was some additional,
There was some supply cuts.
okay, so
Yeah,
that,
Mm.
The athletic director probably should have a meeting with the administration, see what's possible, but that would be feasible.
Well, if that doesn't include any tournaments, that's a good deal of money, the tournaments, because the transportation costs are going up. Tournament scrimmages, which is one thing that the Booster Club picked up already during contingency, which may be something that they would be interested in doing again.
Which may
And
happen
that's-
again.
I'm not sure how much that does come to, but I think those are some things that we would be willing to look at.
Could we revisit that maybe and look at it again? I don't want to go back to too many of these before Monday night. We won't have time to, but that one. we
It did
could.
Carrie, could I ask, for some of this athletic, we are the only school that does not charge for someone to go to a basketball game. We have close to 1,000 here, and we don't charge. Every school we've gone to in our league, and we've been to some out of our league, charges. And we see no one there at the table complaining.
We are going to talk about that because it's been brought to us a couple of times.
Well, if we're looking at making some money, you know,
Right.
if you charge $1 a person, you're gonna get $900 at the door every game.
Help offset the referees.
Well, it would do something.
Do we want to talk about that right now? So what do we think is a good, what is the charge number to cover the other schools, guys?
It's like $1 student, $1
Mm.
You charge for every,
Family rate,
everything.
individual rate, 5 or 7, you get a cheaper rate.
I think historically, obviously, we used to charge, and pay someone to stand and collect the money, right? Is that, okay, and then we got rid of that, stopped having person do money collection at the same time, obviously, we charge. So when you collect, you have to have cost for some.
Right, we are gonna do that.
Yeah, you're paying a person to guard the door.
They do offer, I mean, there is an option for staff to sign up for monitoring the games or
Then
pay.
the staff has to be paid.
But, yeah, but you absolutely have to make sure, no, staff does not have to be there. They can sign up for extra.
What about reaching out to the community?
Well, if there is a problem,
Somebody's willing to come up and take the money.
Right, I mean,
Administration has to be there.
Oh, but, yes, you have to, but we're offering, yes.
They have to be.
They're bringing the funds back to us by putting these looking for other schools.
Just to keep that in mind, some of their funds are the same.
Or Cedar High School. Why couldn't the students collect at the door?
I'm sorry?
Targeting for the money that comes in, ball games, to go support, or is that not?
Things that we do it, like trash.
Right. Right, it would have a bond over the end.
I think so, then.
I don't know about whether that's legal as far as the money coming in, whether it's no, whether it's earmarked or not.
He did it as a fundraiser for certain groups.
I'm just talking about the entry, if they would charge admissions for a sporting event, that money goes to the sporting
Well,
events.
It would, could be used to offset the cost.
That's what I meant, can that go to, be dedicated to the sports, or is that a problem with the bookkeeping?
It would be a indirect
Bookkeeping already.
Yeah.
I know one school, the senior class is the ones that were selling the tickets.
Yeah.
You know, they must have got a share of that paid towards their class for doing it every Monday. One class, split up two classes, you know.
Why can't National Honor Society do it? They have to do community service. So they could sit there, sell the tickets. That's their community service.
We'd find somebody. Yeah.
Volunteers. Point of order.
What
is
about
contractual.
volunteers?
It's contractual. How about if we, we'll bring this back Monday night with the other sports?
That's contractual.
That's it. Everything we've set up, stuff
Oh, okay.
still volunteer.
I don't think it would be
She said it wasn't right. Teachers don't have to pay.
So, because they're still doing something for the community.
Oh, right. But we have talked about it a couple of times, tossing around in this conference.
No, you haven't. Tom brought it up once and they shot him down.
It's not that difficult. Okay. Now comes the hard part.
Can I ask a question in the next discussion? Becky, I know we didn't count much there through that whole list, but what is our deficit?
614, 849.
614, 849, you saved what, $3,000?
Can I ask everybody to look at this for just a second? It's a 5-year plan.
On a roll.
Becky, on that column that says 2013, 2014, we just eliminated, we decreased our budget gap quite a bit. It's now 614, 849. Next column down, you got available reserve, restricted reserves at 348, 555. We could change that 535, 284 to 268, 917 to cover our 617, 849 gap. So I would like to propose that we use $614,000, 849 of our reserve fund to close our gap, and we're done.
Let's go around the table.
Got a motion?
It's not a motion.
Okay.
We're just, everybody gets to weigh in like we have about everything else.
He made a motion.
614, 849,
Come down to
where we are.
So what you're proposing, Chris, is like 13, 23. It stays like it is right there. And then we vote on what we've done on top.
Because what we did in the executive session, we just saved $275,000. I think that's a pretty good savings. By doing this, we'll also put $300,000 in the next year's reserve fund.
What are you gonna do in 15 and 16?
Well, then they're gonna merge with another school.
I'm gonna stay to wake up too.
You're okay with
Yep.
Okay, Joe?
Well, at this point in time, the stuff here we caught, we should have looked at this a lot sooner than this. So this has been necessitated, this past by the situation that we find ourselves in now. I think going forward, next year, we are gonna have to make some incredibly hard decisions. But I don't think it's fair to anybody at this point, because I think we wanna minimize the impact to our programs at this point in time, so I would be against that.
You're in favor of using
I
six
think
hundred
you cut
fourteen
positions
thousand
halfway
dollars?
through the year, so, that's my logic behind this.
Reggie?
At this time, I'm in favor of using the 614, but I think we gotta serve notice to the district that we have a problem. And next year is not going to be easy.
Start with the big raises. Start with the administration raises. 4 and 5% every year.
Are they gonna hire a new principal?
Yep, they're going
So
to.
I'm hearing five of you say that you just want to use this much fund balance, $614,000?
So negotiate some of those positions next year.
Okay.
No.
I think that's a
I'm
majority.
not in favor of that, and I would like your recommendation, but.
Just to be as clear as things, we would have to use more unrestricted and restricted in order to keep our 4%, underneath our 4% levy for the the fund balance. The state only allows us to carry over 4% of next year's budget as unrestricted. So we could still use the same amount of reserves, it will vary based on.
Ratio.
Yes. I just want to make everyone clear that if you see a different number, then whatever, it's because we will have to comply with that.
Becky, in this amount here, are you using any projected leftover from this year's budget?
No.
Yeah.
So that 155,000, is that accurate?
Sorry?
It's projected $155,000, I think it might be left over. That's not.
Everything is projected.
On the budget that you gave us the other day, I thought there was 100. On the last page. So total central services, projected was 152,395.
No, this is what I'm projecting to be left over, that's including, that's where I got this number from. That's leaving that left over. On 5-year budget, 11.9, so that's what we're projecting spending for this year. Those are my best estimates at this time, not knowing what the next 2 months will hold. This was the tools and
Uh-huh.
Oh, no, she was just, oh, all right.
Reggie is absolutely right, we're gonna have to talk about I would recommend starting October or even September next year, we're gonna have to talk about these serious cuts.
We don't have time to target those, ask the questions, so we know what we're doing.
We did, this was handed to us 2 weeks ago, here it is, April 15, 16, 17. I think we owe it to our staff to do this next year.
Has to be set up a goal on the fund balance, how much does each, or if I live with, hey, maybe it's zero next year. But that is a goal now.
I think that's unrealistic. I think we're
Well,
gonna have to
whatever
cut
it
more
is.
next year.
Right, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
You think
We can get started on it and ask questions on it. Maybe
We don't
do a sports
know.
topic, and a education topic, and an operations topic. And so we have a thorough understanding of it. And the expectations of it.
Is there any other business to come before the board tonight? Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Randy? All in favor?
Two. This, and Mary.
Can I ask a question?
Just a moment, please. We're adjourned at 8:48. Sure.
Can we get some clarification for those of us who are on that list of possible cuts? Are we safe, or does it all come back to Monday's meeting? Could Sue come in here and make a different decision?
The majority of the board has voted not to make any cuts.
But that, you're not answering my
All fund
question. Could
balance.
Sue Kelly come back on Monday, and could we have our jobs cut again?
Next year. Not without the board approval.
Okay.
Which she would get
Okay.
They're gonna change the number on the 9s on that.
Are you still gonna hire another principal?
Yes.
How can you?
That is another discussion.
That's a yes.
That and another discussion.